Hi there. I don't need these damn things. Good day, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. It is Tuesday, May 26th. I'm Danny Gregory. This is ostensibly the life drawing party, although I am transitioning it, and I will explain a bit about that. As I showed you in my opening little screen, there was me waving, or some person waving hello, waving goodbye, I don't know, but just saying hello for today. But also just thinking about change and transition. I feel like we're going through yet another set of changes. Do you feel that? Do you feel like we're in a different moment in time than we were a couple of months ago? And how do you feel about it, if you do sense that? Let's talk a bit about that in a second. Hello to everybody who's out there: Thistle, Grace, Raynell, Margaret, Steve, Catherine, Lisa, and here's somebody who sounds a bit new: Elgena Kaloum Safari. Exotic name. So thank you all for joining me to draw with me. Here's what I want to do today. Drawing-wise, I don't want to teach you nothing. I want to just be your friend. It sounds creepy. I just want to draw. I just feel like drawing. I don't feel like teaching you. I feel like talking about what's on my mind, what's on your mind, and just drawing together. Okay? So that's sort of the transition that I'm thinking that I want to make with these live drawing parties. And I want to slowly transition back to a thing that I did for a long time called Draw With Me. Draw with me, or draw me if you'd like, but draw with me. Let's just draw. Let's just hang out and draw. So it's up to you today what you're going to draw, what you're going to draw with. I ain't telling you. It's up to you. I have a project that I'm working on that I'm going to do a little bit of work on if I get around to it, which is a commission. Pretty exciting. I rarely get commissions. I rarely want to do commissions. In fact, I've turned down a couple recently because I just don't really like them. But this is a commission that I couldn't say no to, and that commission came from my son Jack and his girlfriend Amanda. And they asked me if I would do a drawing of Penny, their dog, to hang in their living room. Kind of an honor, right? I mean, what better client could I have than them? What better subject than a dog? And to be in a place of honor in their home and to be asked to do that, all these things make an aging dad's heart leap and pound. So I'm starting to just kind of work on some ideas for it, and so I might work on those sketches later on. Okay? So let's just start drawing. I'm opening my mail. So, you know, as you may or may not know, I normally live in New York City. Right now I'm here in this palatial baronial hall in Phoenix, Arizona, where today the temperature is supposed to, ridiculously this week, get to, I believe, 106 degrees Fahrenheit. Celsius would be really post-apocalyptic, but even Fahrenheit's kind of ridiculous. But I knew that this was going to come. I've experienced it before. It's going to get worse, but it's okay. I'm prepared. Got up really early this morning, went for a walk by the canal. It was beautiful. Saw what I think might be either a vulture or an eagle or a hawk or just like an incredibly large pigeon. Yeah, so I'm getting used to it, getting into it, all right? Getting into this world here. Thistle says it should be 103 here. Here, Thistle, don't you live in England or something? That seems crazy. Annette warns me, wait until it gets to 118 degrees. I mean, that's cooking weather, right? I mean, 118 degrees is like what you set your stove to. But that's the way they do things here in the desert. It's fine. So anyway, I've been away from home for quite a long time. And finally, our mail has caught up with us from New York. You know, we kept, among the many anxieties we have about not being in New York City right now, is the idea of huge accumulations of mail sitting, getting lost, moldering, who knows what. But now it's started to arrive. And the first thing that arrived was, well, some bills, fine, but then also magazines. I mean, like 2 or 3 months worth of the New Yorker and New York Magazine. And it's weird to look through this sort of progression of magazine covers and to sort of see these snapshots in time as we've changed, right? We've changed so much over the last couple of months. But also among them were a couple of interesting manila envelopes from Artist Magazine. Some of you may know I do a column for the Artist Magazine, and here is one of the ones that showed up. This is actually the April issue, Cultivate Creativity in the Garden. So this is April. So this is the April issue, which means it probably came out sometime in March. I didn't get it until here, this late May. And it's, this is a nice magazine. I mean, it's got lots of like beautiful kind of profiles of artists and, how-to things. And mine is in here somewhere. Here it is. What do you do with a dreadful drawing? That was my topic, and it has lots of drawings by me. Some dreadful, some okay. It's hard. Like you're in a magazine, right? And you write an article called "What do you do with a dreadful drawing?" and then you got to put your own drawings in with it. It's tough. But this is what I expose myself to. So I've been doing this column for, I don't know, a year or so. And so it was nice. So when you do a column, they send you, I have a subscription to the magazine, but also they send you these, copies for your files. Then there's another one that also showed up. This is another issue, The Story Behind a Painting. Do-it-yourself summer school. This is the June issue. Okay, so it comes out now, basically. It comes out in May. It's the June issue. But of course, I wrote this column quite a while ago. It takes a while to get into the magazine. They have to design it. They have to print it and all that stuff. So I wrote this before we all got into lockdown. And what is my topic? Irony of ironies. Can you see it? Pack your sketchbook. Danny Gregory welcomes you to the wide world of illustrated travel journaling. Yeah. And so it's all pages from my travel journals. And so people are going to be getting this in the mail. Hey, thanks a lot, Gregory. Thanks. Here's travel journaling tips. Whole sidebar on travel journaling tips that I wrote. And so anyway. I wonder what my next column is that I wrote. Was it about portrait parties and how to pack a room with friends and all get together and draw each other? I don't know. I don't even remember, honestly. But we'll see. I'm sure I'll get that copy soon. We'll travel again. I sure hope to. I hope to travel back to New York City whenever that happens. Yes, ironically, Karen says I didn't pack mine. I did. I packed a sketchbook, but not the sketchbook. I didn't think I was traveling. I thought I was going away for the weekend. But I've been thinking over the last week. I mean, last Thursday I did this live drawing party with you, and I just decided to do just a pure demonstration of how I do ink wash paintings. Maybe you saw it. I was in a weird mood. I mean, I've been in a weird mood on and off. Weird mood. I mean, that's an understatement, right? We're all in weird moods. But I've been thinking about like what has been going on with me, with the world, and you know, what to think about, what to say about it. I think there's this whole kind of return, getting back to normal that's been going on, right? Stores opening up and people going to the beach and all that stuff. And not in New York, where it continues to be locked down, but certainly here in Phoenix, Memorial Day weekend, we saw fireworks, you know, it was a lot of returning to normalcy. But it's not normal. It doesn't feel normal to me. I don't feel comfortable returning to normal. It's not normal. It's not normal. It's not normal for any of us. It's not normal for me being here in this other place. But, you know, there's this concept which is, which I read about. I think Brene Brown talks about it. You know, Brene Brown. Right? So she talks about, I don't think this is her idea, but it's about people who are, I guess, I was going to say overperformer, but it's maybe, yeah, let's just use that word. I don't think that's quite the word that's correct, but overperformer, the idea of when you get into an anxiety-ridden situation, some people kind of take on, call them again overperform. I don't think that is the word that I'm looking for, but I'm being one of them, start making lists, start making assignments, start, taking charge. And then there are people who are underperformers. Again, it's not the word performer. Underperformers, who are people who kind of give up. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, you decide. I'm hopeless. I can't. I just can't. I can't deal. So some people fall into one category, some fall into the others. And a lot of people probably are in the middle and aren't overreacting or underreacting. Yeah, it's not even overcompensating. Underfunctioning. Yeah, maybe it's functioning. Overfunctioning. Underfunctioning, let's call it that. So basically the idea that, like, I'm going to push through this. I'm going to control it. I'm going to control a situation that is, yeah, I don't think it is. It might be A personality or B type person. I'm not even sure that it's not even a personality thing. A lot of it is built into how we react to things, right? So if when you grew up as a small child, when a bad thing happened, there were other people who said, don't worry about this, I'll take care of it. Just stay there, sit there, I'll take care of it. It's going to be okay, And a lot of times those are people who are at the bottom of the birth order, the second, third, youngest children in the family, who are used to like a bunch of like take charge people being around them, older people, and them sort of saying like, okay, I'll go along with it. And then there are people who are firstborns, and they tend to be people who take charge of things, feel responsible, feel overly responsible, and take control of things. And I think this also comes down to like, creative people, right? When you're a creative person, your natural response to problems is to try to solve them. I think that's what we do naturally. Not all problems. There's certainly a lot of times where we just like operate in denial. I don't know. I'm an artist. I don't know. But I think a lot of times we like to think of solutions. We're natural problem solvers. That's what being creative is about. I think it's about, it could be a technical problem, like how do I make this or how do I paint that? But it's always like, it's not necessarily settling for the status quo or assuming that everything's going to be taken care of, but just feeling like, oh, I have to think of a new way to deal with the situation. I have to come up with a new solution. And so you kind of plunge into action and you start making stuff and doing stuff. And that's often what I do in all kinds of situations. I plunge in, I start making, I start doing. And I think that's what I've been doing in the last few weeks a lot. I've been making a lot of things, and then I've been hating them. Just thinking that what I'm making is crap. And my wife said to me, maybe what's going on is you don't know what the problem is, you're just throwing up solutions. You haven't even thought about what the problem is. You haven't even thought about what we need or what you need, or what you're just kind of grabbing your iPad, grabbing your camera, grabbing your pen, starting to just plunge in and do stuff because you feel better when you do that. You feel like, okay, well, I'm doing something. I'm on it. And something will come out of this. And I think that's not a terrible reaction. I think it's better than being slumped in depression, cringing in the corner. But it also can make you feel like you're not necessarily progressing or getting anywhere, because the things that you're coming up with don't seem to change things or don't seem to solve the problem. And so then you say, am I no good? Am I no good at doing this? Why can't I solve this problem? And you haven't really even figured out whether it's a solvable problem or what the problem is anyway. And the problem that we're finding ourselves in right now, of course, is not up to any of us, I guess, to solve. But we do have to solve our lives. We do have to figure out, how do we live through this? How do we live with this? What are we doing to reorient our lives to this new reality? And that's kind of what's going on. So I think it's good to make. I think it's good to do stuff. I do. I think it's good to explore. I think you might stumble upon solutions. But it's also difficult when, I think one of the struggles that I'm having with coming up with the solution to the problem is the problem is so difficult to define because so many things are unknown, right? So on the one hand, we're getting a sense that, okay, all right, looks like we're out of the woods. Looks like it's going to be fine. Let's move on. And then we also get messages that say, this is not going to change for a really long time, and you better adjust your reality to it. And you say, well, I'd like to accept the first. I'm kind of petrified about the second. And if in fact this is our reality, how do we prepare for that? What steps do we take? And as creative people, as artists, what do we do about it? Because I don't think any of us want to continually make art about the pandemic. We've been seeing that on Instagram now for a month or two, and it was kind of cute and kind of funny and, interesting for a while. And sometimes people were like, letting it all hang out and being, really emotive about their depression or their anxiety. But again, if this starts to become reality, then we have to move on and we have to start to do other stuff. And I don't know about you, but I'm finding that a lot of the conversations that I'm having with people are the same conversations. People who I was used to having very different conversations with, friends who have different kinds of jobs, live in different kinds of places or different kinds of people, but now suddenly we're having the same 4 conversations, right? What have you heard about? What is your feelings about the situation? Netflix, what have you watched? What should I watch? How are you doing? What's your life like? Are you exercising? Are you overeating? Etc. Those same conversations, people who I would normally have never had those kind of conversations with about, that's what we end up having conversations about. So, so I think this is the point, making art during the pandemic, but not about the pandemic. I think it's interesting if you look back at World War II. I don't know that it was necessarily a terribly creative time. It was certainly a time that ultimately caused enormous change in art. And there is art that was made during World War II about the war, right? There were great artists in uniform, people who were drawing life, what it was like for soldiers. There's certainly Holocaust art that we've seen, that's about that situation. But I think in the end, while that has some historical interest, when it comes to actually making art about what's going on in your head, I think that's a different assignment. It's a different assignment, because we don't want to just make art about anxiety and boredom, right? And you think of something like The Diary of Anne Frank, which is, we could call it a work of art. It's certainly an engagement and a reaction to the situation that she was in. And, when we read it, it sort of gives us vicarious experience where we see like, oh, I wonder what it would be like to be in that situation. Sort of interesting. And I imagine that we could be making that kind of art now too, that might endure in its relevance. But what else? And also, what else is it giving us? What else is this art giving us as people? Like, what function is it playing in our lives? Making of art, I mean, we're all here today. Hopefully you're drawing with me. That's something I need to remember to get back to working on my drawing. But let me get down to that because I'm just blathering here. So this is Penny. I want to draw her. I like this picture. I'm going to use it as my model, but I'm going to get rid of it for now because I'm just going to work on this picture. Again, drawing from a photo, it seems to be an inevitable requirement for this day and age because, there's only so many drawings I can do of the backyard or of the pantry. So invariably, we're ending up drawing from photographs. So, yeah. Diane says the MFAH just had a normal Rockwell exhibit around World War II. It was very moving. That's a great typo. Normal Rockwell. I have a hard time grokking the concept of boredom now more than ever. Not nearly enough hours in the day to do all the things I'd like. Yeah, I don't feel bored. Boredom to me isn't the issue. I mean, I think boredom is something that, adults really, there's no reason for adults to ever be bored. As you say, there's plenty of stuff to do. I guess it depends on whether you're thinking of your art as a pastime, right? Is it some way of filling the hours, We have a jigsaw puzzle set up in the kitchen. And if you, have a couple minutes and you want to change your pace, you go in and you work on the jigsaw puzzle a little bit, and there you go on. And you can look at art making that way, I guess. That's not really what I see in it. I think it has more importance in my life than just a nice thing to do. I'm not a Sunday painter. I rarely paint on Sundays. I don't know about you. I mean, here we are, it's Tuesday. And we're drawing. You are drawing, right? So yeah, just thinking about is busyness and productivity a distraction? Is that its purpose? Which is, I mean, of all the things to do, it beats like shooting smack as a way of distracting yourself. So it's healthier, I guess. But even so, that's not what we want to be doing with our lives, just passing the time, even if it's passing the time by doing all kinds of important things. I was talking to somebody who's really into doing composting and spending a lot of time doing that, and I thought, well, yeah, I guess. I mean, I do find myself more than probably at any other point in my life being willing to just sit and kind of be in the moment in my garden, and just listen to the birds and feel the incredibly hot sun on my face. My face that we have this really not very good suntan lotion. It's not called suntan lotion anymore. It's called sunscreen. Sunscreen, it's not very good because it's like really pasty and thick, and I end up feeling like a clown wearing it. And I catch sight of myself, and I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? Like an old clown. But yeah, but sitting and just being is something that I remember watching my dogs do that for so many years, sitting, kind of slowly closing their eyes as they sit and just are present in the moment. That's a nice thing, and I'm finding myself finding it easier to commit some time to doing that, as opposed to saying, okay, I got to get on with it. I got other stuff to do. This is not a useful thing of my time. But And sometimes drawing is like that. I think sometimes drawing can just be, yeah, I'm just going to sit here and cross-hatch, and, it's just a good way of killing some time. But I want it to mean more than that to me. I've always said that drawing isn't about necessarily producing something. In this case, I'm trying to make a drawing for them to hang on their wall. That's pretty unusual for me. But I think generally, for me, making art is about the present. It is about the process. It is about the experience. But it's not to kill time. I think, like, if you go to church, you wouldn't just say, well, I didn't really have anything else to do, so I thought I'd go to church. No, it's an important thing to you. It's an important thing that you honor and cherish and commit time to. And, I think that drawing can and should be the same thing. It's not just a hobby. Not sure exactly what a hobby means exactly. Hobby as opposed to a pastime. Pastime. Just pass the time. I see it with these birds that I watch in my backyard when I'm passing time. It's birds, like they basically are just sitting around. They're looking for food, and then they're just sitting around. So yes, Mary says, you're talking about a purposeful life. It's true. But is a purposeful life a busy life? Right? You're not squandering your time. That's not the point. The point isn't to squander your time. You don't want to be, I went to a lot of meetings and I watched a lot of reality TV and then I died. That was my life. No, it's not. It's not that. It's not about being busy. It's about, feeling like you are honoring and appreciating and using your time well. And I think that's something that we are thinking about these days. I think all of us, like, what is the purpose of our lives, and are we doing the right thing with it? I think a lot of people went through this period when the quarantine first began and said, this is a great opportunity for me to sit down and write that novel I've always wanted to do, or to really get down to drawing and really polish it and really perfect it, and, to learn how to play the guitar or so forth. And then, it became this free time, this holiday. I don't know if that's wearing off. I don't know if we're starting to say, we can't really be on permanent holiday. This isn't a holiday. But that doesn't mean that we can't take new directions with our life. We can't use this as an opportunity to rethink things, to maybe go in new directions. It is a pause moment in our lives. So it is different. I think that is an important thing, is to recognize that it's a different moment. It's not. And I think we all have thought about what happens afterwards. Are we just going to return to normal? Or have we gleaned valuable lessons from all this? There's a lot of people who I've spoken to who said, you know what, I feel kind of shitty about saying this, but I've actually kind of enjoyed this time. I've actually gotten some perspective. I've actually spent time with my family. I've actually realized that I like to read books. When Hurricane Sandy, sorry. When Hurricane Sandy hit New York City, we lost power for 10 days. And my wife and I were both working uptown. So the downtown area where we live was dark. We had no power. But uptown did have power. So we would spend the day uptown working, and then we would come back downtown in the evening, and it was weird because we were going from a place of essential normalcy, where stores were open and people had power in their houses and all that stuff, and we had none of it. So, and then we would cross 23rd Street, and we would be in the darkness. We literally had little lanterns that we attached to our heads, little flashlights that we could, use when you go spelunking, so we could see our way down the streets to our house. And kind of had a new set of habits during this time, where we would come home and we would play cards by candlelight, and we would read to each other, and we would go to bed early because it was dark and you couldn't see anything. We obviously didn't watch TV. We weren't on the internet. After a while we were like, you know what, this is actually pretty good. And then the lights came back on. And so for a few days we were like, you know what, we are not going back. We are going to continue to live like this. We're going to continue to appreciate our lives. And within a week, back to normalcy. So yeah, I don't know, this might be a completely different thing. We might have a completely different reaction to this. This might be so big that we can't just walk away from it. But we're trying. We're playing golf. We're going to restaurants. We're trying. I don't know how we feel about it. I don't know if we believe it. Anyway, these are some of the things that I've been thinking about. I imagine that you've been thinking about a lot of them too. But going back to my original thought, which was wanting to be busy, and what I decided over this past weekend, Memorial Day weekend, was that I am going to be busy, but I am going to try to be more coherent in my busyness. I'm not just going to be making stuff for its own sake, but I'm going to try and be much more structured in what I do. We'll see how long that lasts. But one of the things I've been thinking about is this particular experience of drawing with you a couple times a week. This is the last week that Kosha is going to be doing this live drawing thing on Instagram that she's been doing. And I'm thinking that I'm going to be going back to doing Draw With Me's on Thursday. I'm going to be thinking of other things that I can make for you and say to you and ways in which I can do it. But I'm not sure that I'm going to continue specifically drawing with you twice a week. I'll let you know, and I hope you understand why that would be. Is it my attempt for normalcy? Not really. It's not that I'm saying like, okay, now we don't need this anymore, because I know that we do. I know that I do. I know that I still need to hang out and chat with you. I just feel like I need to reconsider the form of it. And I need to do a better job for you. So these are things that I'm going to be thinking about and trying to take the time to do better. Because I don't really know what your position is now. I mean, when I used to do Draw With Me on Thursdays at noon Eastern Standard Time, there were obviously a lot of people who were like, well, I'm working, dude. How do you expect me to be there at noon? And some people did, and then other people would watch it later on. But now, I don't know. Are you going to be at home? Are you going to be around? Are you going to be available? do you want me to do this? Do you have any other ideas about it? Because what I'm really thinking is, I don't want to have to think about teaching all the time. I want to be doing. I like talking to you, or at you, but I don't know. I don't know that this form, which kind of came about in a spontaneous way, is necessarily the one that I want to continue with. What do you guys think? Let me just pause a second here and come back. Take a break from my penny drawing. This is a drawing that I'm drawing on the iPad right now because I'm kind of just getting used to the idea, but Jack is sending me some paper, 13.5 by 9.5 inches, which fits the frame. I'm drawing to the frame. So, anyway. Yeah, I don't find this taxing. Somebody said that. Chris, I think, said. I imagine it's taxing to be on several times a week. Yeah, I like doing this. I like talking to you. I just feel like I'm not doing it well right now. I think look, in general, I'm having a bit of a crisis of confidence. I've been making, as I said, a lot of things. I recorded several episodes of a new podcast. I made a bunch of videos. Have something like 300 topics for essays I want to write. And we've got the next 3 workshops lined up and in production. And speaking of workshops, you all know about France's workshop that's coming up in a couple of weeks about cross-hatching, cross-hatch portrait workshop with France Van Stone. If you like the cross-hatching I was doing today, well, it's primitive by comparison with what she does, but if you'd like to check that out, you can. But yes, so I've been busy doing a lot of different things. The workshops have been fantastic, and it's partly because I've been collaborating with other people. But when it comes to me burrowing down into my head and making stuff, my critical function is absolutely abysmal right now. I have actually a couple friends who've said that they would look at what I'm doing so that they can tell me whether it's as bad as I think it is, but we'll see. So yeah. So what's the new podcast? Yeah, it's called the podcast that doesn't exist right now. It's called A Bunch of Files Sitting in a Folder on My Computer right now. I mean, I'm thinking I want to make a podcast that's actually really short. Doesn't sound like me, I know, but yeah, a micro podcast. Heather is very kind and says, even when I seem to be in an off mood, I'm worth listening to. Worth listening to. I appreciate that, and I'm glad. But I would like to feel like I know what I'm doing. Maybe that's what it comes down to. Rather than just blathering, rather than just knocking stuff out, rather than just, I mean, I made some let me show you this animation that I made. In some ways, this kind of sums it up, perhaps. Where's that thing? I made it this a couple days ago. I made this. Let me show it to you. This is the animation I made. Yeah, I spent like an hour making this. And here's another one that I made. Yeah. I think I've shown you this one that I made. And here's another one I made that I don't believe I've shown you. This is the streets of New York with me wandering through it in an endless loop in my mind, thinking about New York and Just wandering back and forth in circles. Yeah, so I've been making some things like that are just sort of cyclical things. I think I've shown you this one. Oh, that was an animation. What happened to it? Yeah. Oh, never mind. That screwed up. Anyway, so yeah, so I've been making those kinds of things. Been making this podcast. I've been writing these things, but it's not gelling for me yet. So anyway, look. It's not weird, right? It's probably perfectly normal. It's just this feeling of like making, throwing it on the pile, making, throwing it on the pile, which is normally what I think the creative process should be like. I think that it's about making and then pausing and refining, right? I like to say it's kind of like ready, fire, aim, right? Ready. Spend a lot of time absorbing things, readying yourself, reading books, watching movies, looking at art, having conversations, visiting websites, going on Instagram, blah, 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 readying. Fire, boom, making stuff, throwing it out, aim, refining it. So, like a lot of times when I write a book, I just have folders of stuff that I'm throwing stuff into. I walk around with my phone and I have ideas and I put them down. And then there comes a point where I go, okay, it's time to start to pile all this stuff into heaps and start organizing it and structuring it and laying it down. So I think maybe that's what I'm doing right now, is I'm just like doing that, but I don't have a sense of why. I don't have a sense of where it's going. So it's a little depressing, a little making me anxious, but it's probably fine. It's probably okay. You know, I'm going to look back on this stuff and I'm going to go, okay, yeah, I can sort of see what I could be doing with that, you know, but then, I mean, look at this. This is a selfie that I did. What do you think of this one, Dr. Freud? Yeah. Yeah, so it's like, okay, great. Now what? So yeah, so making, spewing it out. Yeah, I mean, Carol's right. It is the monkey. It is the monkey. You know, I've shut my monkey periodically. I haven't killed it. And I think the monkey, this moment is what the monkey kind of lives for and dreads, right? The monkey's always saying to us, like, don't do this, some terrible thing will happen. And then when a terrible thing happens, the monkey is freaking out and also trying to prevent more terrible things happening. So partly my monkey is probably saying, nothing that you're doing is right because nothing of it is making this go away and solving this problem. So, you know, you suck, which is probably true. Yeah. Hit the monkey with a hammer. But I mean, the monkey's what tells me to wash my hands. The monkey's what tells me to wear a mask in some ways. Like, it's part of that. You know, we don't want to kill it, right? Wilma thinks I might be overthinking. Just do something entirely different from art. Such as travel, maybe? I do other things besides art. I work on jigsaw puzzles. We started playing badminton. I read good books and trashy books. Yeah, a lot of things. So, yeah. Heather says, the whole pandemic is making my inner fears, mostly germ-related, stand up and go, see, I was right. It is annoying. Yeah, I guess those inner fears were right, but did they really protect us? It's kind of like a person who always says, if you're always saying something disastrous is going to happen, eventually you might be right. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's helpful. So I think it's more helpful to say, I'm transcending it, I'm moving on, I'm creating, I'm moving us forward. You know, and maybe that's what's going on when you're creating a bunch of stuff is It's processing. It's definitely processing, right? It's organizing, structuring it. It's kind of like dream work, where you're getting a grip on things by putting it out there, by trying to be as unself-conscious as possible. To not be critical. I think that is really important in order for the processing function of art to really do its thing, is to not stop and say, well, you sure? Let's really think about this. No, you want to just vent and flow and pour it out. And then look at it and say, you know what? This is its purpose. Its purpose is to just be. It is to just be made. So I can make a little animation of the blossoms falling off the tree, and it's like, it doesn't have anything, there's nothing else about it to do. Like, that's it. It was that, and that's that. So I think that that's something we want to think about, is maybe this is just processing, and so we should assess it. How do we assess it? Do we not assess it at all? Right? I mean, assessing is important in the sense that it helps us to refine, it helps us to progress, and it helps us to make more of what we're doing. That's definitely all stuff we want to be doing. We want to get sharper. We want to hone our tools. But there are also times where you go, just give me a break, back off. Let me just massage my soul with this brush. So, yes. What else are you guys thinking? Rent a car and go back to New York. Hertz is bankrupt. Yeah, we thought about doing that. Where would we stay along the way? We've driven back and forth across the United States. The first time it took us 10 days. The second time I did it with Jack, it took us 6 days. But we did stay in places. Not really into that. And the thing is, if we get to New York, we're in New York. And that's not necessarily where I want to be either. So we're going to get there. We'll get there eventually when it's the right time to go. So, there's a lot of things to struggle with. Meditation, Thistle suggests. Yes, I had been meditating for a while. It wasn't bad. And drawing often for me is meditative. Like working on this drawing of Penny is a meditative kind of thing of cross-hatching. That's nice. Study theoretical physics, says John. By Jiminy, that's it. Please recommend some books. Are there like some YouTube videos I should be watching about theoretical physics? What kind of theoretical physics? Tell me more. That would be great. I'm going to do that. All right. You see, I hope that this has been useful to you. Sometimes I feel like I want to be honest with you, and sometimes I feel like it's the last thing you probably want from me. A lot of whining and meandering, but today is a blend of, me being me, and me also trying to be supportive and entertaining for you. So, it's all good. It makes me feel good to talk to you. So thank you for letting me do that. Let's just see what Miriam says. Miriam says quite a lot here. She says, you may be overthinking things. Just keep creating. Seeing that work that seems to you that's not going well inspires me to keep on trying to learn how to use my iPad. You should. I have a lot of commissions, but I have to make a living. And in between every single thing I do for the commission, I'm creating these silly mid-century color pop art kinds of paintings that I think are silly. But they relax me, calm me down, so I can go back to the commissions, and people actually buy these simple little procrastination paintings. Obsessing is okay, but relax the brain and let yourself be. You're good, your work is good, your conversation is good, and it's fine to do with what you want to do. Thank you. That was a nice little pep talk. I'm glad that you're being busy and making cool new stuff. It's all good. So you don't have to solve this problem for me. I don't have to solve it for me either. It's fine to have problems. It's fine to make stuff, I think it's fine to explore who you are. This is not, as we're seeing, this is not a thing that's going to end. The pandemic eventually will wane, but I think these processes, these discussions that we have with ourselves about art and our creativity, it's a struggle. It's an ongoing struggle. No matter how long you've been doing it, that's a lot of what's interesting about it, is the struggle, the push to get to new places. It's not something that just simply gets resolved and suddenly you're happily being normal Rockwell, making art all the time and never having a challenge and being completely confident about it. I don't think that's not my goal. My goal is to continue to explore it and to wrestle with it and to push it new directions and to be beaten up by it sometimes and to master it at other times. It's an ongoing quest, an adventure, if you will, a lifelong journey. Eventually, I will get to the point where I can throw the ring into the volcano. But in the meantime, there are dragons to slay, and there are ogres to fight, and there are things that you have to run away and hide in a bush because you can't fight them and hope that they pass beyond you. I think that that's a lot of what goes on with me and I've noticed this ever since I went through the grieving process after my wife passed away, Patty, was seeing that grief and my psychological states are like clouds passing overhead. They blank out the sun, but then they move on. And so in the darkest hour, you say to yourself, this really sucks, it's really awful, but it's not forever, and it will move on. And that is fine. That's a thing that you get with perspective. You get it with gray hair, too, this realization that any given moment is transient. But also that's what's interesting about living and about creating is the fact that you are allowed to keep going. You're not trying to reach a destination. You're trying to push yourself into new territory that's often scary, that your monkey doesn't like. But that's where growth comes from. That's where the thrill comes from too. But sometimes it can be overwhelming. Sometimes it's just, I want to go home. Quite literally, But I think it happens in every grand odyssey that you've ever read about in literature. That there are times when the hero is valiantly conquering his foes, and there are times when he is inches from death, and there are times where he is sick for home, and there are times that he meets new people, and there are times that he is proud of himself for all he's accomplished, and he grows, and that's life. That's not a metaphor. That is what we're living through. What we're living through right now is a giant metaphor too. So, I think let's not begrudge it and let's not feel like we have to solve it. But as Deb says, click your heels 3 times and say there's no place like home. There is no place like home, although I have this sort of new home. Let me tell you something in closing, because I spent enough time of your time today. When Jenny and I left New York on our 3-4 day vacation, we flew here, of course. We didn't fly here, we flew to Palm Springs. And in the few days that passed afterwards, where suddenly we realized we couldn't go back to New York, we were going to have to be in quarantine, and we ended up coming down to Phoenix with our family members and ended up again living in his house. There were times that we said to ourselves, because we were fans of the show Lost and we loved The Matrix, there are times we said to ourselves, did we die on that flight from New York to Palm Springs? Did our plane go down and we don't know it? And that this is all a construction? And this is, of course, just narcissism, but I said to myself, well, yeah, they've created this little world for us. It's like 3 or 4 blocks of like relatively high resolution simulation. And, they built some virtual birds to sit in the backyard, and periodically we go on Zoom and we talk to friends of ours that appear in little 720 DPI windows in our, that's not DPI. Anyway, little windows on my screen, and every so often my brother and sister-in-law will come and visit us, and they'll stay for like an hour. So the programmers devote enough time and energy to that. So we have this fantasy, right? And one of the things that happened, it was actually joining a live drawing party like a month ago. I don't know if you remember it, but I was sitting outside, and suddenly I said, "Oh my God, there's a giant hawk." All the birds fell quiet, and there was a hawk sitting on the phone line. And we were talking about this ever after. Like, that was amazing, because in New York, we often see a red-tailed hawk in our neighborhood, but we've never seen a hawk here in Phoenix. It's just that one time. So last week, I said to Jenny, we've never seen the hawk before. Like, did that actually happen? Because I saw it, and I was on with you guys, but did I just imagine that it really happened? She said, no, I saw it. It did happen. It did happen. And I said, okay. But why have we never seen the hawk again? Okay. So we had this conversation like on Wednesday or Thursday. 10 minutes later, Jenny goes into the kitchen. She's standing at the sink, and then she comes running back in. She says, the hawk just landed on the pear tree right outside the kitchen window. It was 5 feet away from the window, sitting there, and it looked right at her. I said, come on. This is right after we'd had this conversation. And I had said, maybe that hawk was just like a part of the simulation that they never could be bothered to like rerun. They forgot that they had created that character. She said, no, it's out there. So I went out, and I looked around. We couldn't see it. And then just then, the hawk flew past us, being chased by a mockingbird, flew down the street, and disappeared. We haven't seen it since. Okay. Coincidence? Sure. I said to Jenny, all right, maybe this is the simulation. What else do we do to test it? I said, think of a thing that you would like to see, and let's see if they come up with it. She said, okay, fireworks. It would be really cool to see fireworks. That was Thursday. The next night, Friday, we suddenly hear booming noises. We go into the front yard. It's 6:30. It hasn't even really gotten dark yet. Fireworks at the end of our street. Boom, fireworks, fireworks. Unlike Friday, we're like, what the hell? It wasn't really Memorial Day, and Memorial Day isn't really a fireworks kind of day. And I said to Jenny, yeah, well, maybe like on some subreddit, there'll be like a description of what this is all about. Some subreddit on virtual worlds. The next day, she found a subreddit which explained that, yes, it was like some high school in Phoenix that was celebrating its anniversary. So anyway, all I'm saying is, I don't know. Coincidence? Red pill, blue pill? You tell me. Thistle says, you have a mockingbird in your territory. They'll keep most predatory birds at bay. True. I mean, but this hawk was big. This mockingbirds, they're very aggressive. It's true. Anyway. Thanks for indulging me. So Thursday, I'm going to go back to Draw With Me. We're going to call it Draw With Me. I'm going to go back and look at some old Draw With Me to try and remember what exactly I was doing back then. That was the nature of that show. I hope you'll be cool with that. And I'm going to think of other things to make for you. And so I will be present to the extent that you want me to be and available and making stuff, but it will be less often on YouTube at least. Okay? Thank you. Thanks for being with me through these last 2 or 3 months of doing this. It's been really great fun. And we've made a lot of cool stuff. I have a whole bag over here full of all the things. Maybe on Thursday I'll pull out all the things that we made from the masks and all the different drawings, and we can kind of talk about them a bit, and that would be fun. Or not. Thank you so much for being with me. Thank you for being my friends out there. Thank you for being part of the simulation. I feel great now. Thank you. I can't wait